March 4th, 2026, a date that will soon be etched into the memories of millions across the central United States. As the nation moves into early spring, a sense of unease settles over the heartland. Meteorologists have been tracking a massive, slow-moving weather system, and now the warnings are becoming reality. The central U.S. faces a major, multi-day weather event, one that meteorologists are calling unprecedented for this time of year. The atmosphere is primed for chaos, with warm, moist air surging northward and colliding with a stubborn cold front. The result? A sprawling 1,500-mile-long corridor of storms, stretching from the heart of Texas all the way to the northeast. On satellite and radar, it looks like a living river of clouds and rain, pulsing with energy and potential danger. But this isn't just a typical spring rain. Instead, we're facing a relentless series of storms, each one dumping heavy rain over the same vulnerable areas. The ground, already saturated from previous showers, simply can't absorb any more water. With each passing hour, the risk of widespread dangerous flooding grows. Imagine a conveyor belt in the sky, carrying wave after wave of moisture and saturating the landscape below. Rivers and streams are swelling, their banks straining to contain the deluge. Fields and neighborhoods are quickly turning into lakes, and the water has nowhere left to go. Flash flooding is a real and immediate threat, with water rising rapidly in low-lying areas. But it's not just the sudden floods. Prolonged river flooding is also likely, threatening millions of people, vast stretches of farmland, and critical infrastructure like roads, bridges, and power lines. While some regions desperately need drought relief, this sudden deluge could bring devastation instead of hope. Communities near smaller creeks and streams are especially vulnerable, as these waterways can rise with little warning and overwhelm defenses. Over the next week, vigilance and preparation are absolutely critical for everyone in the risk zone. Residents are urged to monitor weather alerts, prepare emergency kits, and have evacuation plans ready. Local officials are already mobilizing, setting up sandbag stations, and warning residents to stay alert. Even if the sky looks calm right now, conditions can change in minutes. What starts as a gentle drizzle can quickly escalate into a life-threatening situation. Don't let a peaceful morning lull you into a false sense of security. In this chapter, we'll break down the science behind these storms, the threats they pose, and the practical steps you need to take to stay safe. The coming days will test the resilience of communities across the region. Preparation and awareness will be your best defense. The severity of this flood event starts with a classic atmospheric clash, one that meteorologists have seen before, but rarely with such intensity and persistence. It's a battle in the sky, where two very different air masses meet, and neither is willing to give ground. This invisible conflict sets the stage for everything that follows, and it's the reason why the weather has turned so volatile and dangerous. Warm, moisture-laden air from the Gulf of Mexico surges northward, carrying with it the energy of tropical waters. At the same time, a stubborn pocket of cold, dense air lingers over the northern states, refusing to retreat. Where these two air masses collide, the atmosphere becomes a battleground, with dramatic consequences. The warm air, lighter and more buoyant, is forced to rise up and over the cold air, setting off a chain reaction in the sky. As the warm air ascends, it cools rapidly, and the moisture it carries condenses into towering storm clouds. These clouds grow quickly, fueled by the clash below, and soon unleash torrential downpours. In some places, several inches of rain can fall in just a single hour, overwhelming the land and waterways. The storms that form in this environment are not just ordinary thunderstorms. They are supercharged by the abundance of moisture and the sharp temperature contrast. This dramatic process is unfolding along a sprawling frontal boundary that stretches for hundreds of miles, from the southern plains all the way to the Ohio Valley. It's a vast, shifting line where the two air masses are locked in a standoff, and it's here that the most severe weather is taking shape. For days, this boundary will remain nearly stationary, acting as a conveyor belt for storm after storm. Multiple low-pressure systems will ride along this boundary, each one drawing in more moisture from the Gulf and releasing it as heavy rain. These systems act like engines, pulling in energy and water vapor, and then dumping it over the same regions again and again. The ground, already soaked from previous storms, has nowhere left to absorb the water, increasing the risk of flooding with every passing hour. This setup creates what meteorologists call the training effect, a relentless parade of thunderstorms that follow the same path, much like train cars on a track. Each storm adds more water to the saturated landscape, quickly overwhelming drainage systems and turning streets and fields into rivers. Flash flooding becomes not just possible, but likely, as the rain keeps coming with little time for recovery in between. The combination of abundant moisture, atmospheric instability, and repeated storms is a textbook recipe for severe flooding. Rivers and streams swell beyond their banks. Farmland and neighborhoods are inundated, and the risk to life and property rises with each passing storm. This is not just a heavy rain event. It's a perfect storm of meteorological ingredients coming together in the worst possible way. That's why meteorologists are sounding the alarm. This is not just another rainy week. The warnings are urgent, and the need for preparation is real. Emergency teams are on high alert, monitoring radar screens and issuing alerts as conditions evolve. Communities are being urged to stay informed and take action before the worst of the flooding arrives. Understanding this atmospheric setup is key to grasping the power and danger of what's unfolding. It's a reminder of how quickly weather can turn from routine to life-threatening, and why respecting these warnings can make all the difference. As the clash of air masses continues, the story of this flood event is still being written, one storm at a time. From March 3rd to 5th, the Mississippi and Ohio valleys are bracing for a significant weather event. Heavy rain is forecast to sweep across the region, with most areas expecting 1 to 4 inches of rainfall. However, some isolated locations could see even more, potentially up to 7 inches in a very short period. This kind of rainfall, especially over such a broad area, can quickly overwhelm local waterways and drainage systems. While the average rainfall will be substantial, those isolated pockets of heavier rain could lead to sudden, localized flooding, catching residents off guard. Right now, major rivers like the Ohio and Mississippi are running low due to months of drought. This means that, for the moment, catastrophic flooding along these big rivers isn't likely. But that doesn't mean the region is out of danger, far from it. The real and immediate threat comes from the smaller streams, creeks, and tributaries that crisscross the landscape. These waterways can respond to heavy rain in a matter of hours, rising rapidly and spilling over their banks. Roads, fields, and even homes near these smaller channels can flood with little warning, especially if the rain falls quickly. Nighttime downpours add another layer of risk. When darkness falls, it becomes much harder to spot rising water, flooded roads, or dangerous currents. Drivers and residents may not realize the danger until it's too late. It's crucial for residents not to be lulled into a false sense of security just because the big rivers are low. Flash flooding on smaller waterways is a real and immediate threat, and it can happen with little warning. Take time now to know your local creeks and streams. If you live in a flood-prone area, have a plan in place to move to higher ground quickly if needed. Prepare sandbags, check emergency kits, and stay alert to changing conditions. This first wave of rain will saturate the soil, leaving the ground unable to absorb much more water. That means the region will be primed for even worse flooding if another round of storms arrives soon after. For the Mississippi and Ohio valleys, the risk is just beginning. Stay informed, stay prepared, and take every warning seriously. This weekend, the flood threat shifts south, from the Rio Grande Valley in Texas to western Tennessee. Here, repeated rounds of tropical-like downpours could bring 3 to 6 inches of rain, with some areas seeing up to a foot. The ground will saturate quickly, turning nearly all new rainfall into dangerous runoff. Urban flooding will be widespread, with storm drains overwhelmed and streets turning into rivers. Secondary rivers like the Red River will surge, and tributaries feeding the Mississippi will be under extreme stress. The relentless rain means little time for recovery between storms, creating a prolonged period of high danger. Residents must prepare for significant disruptions, property damage, and real threats to safety. This will be a soaking unlike any in recent memory. The Texas Hill Country is especially vulnerable to flash flooding, as seen in last year's Kerrville disaster. Thin, rocky soil means rain runs off instantly, turning dry creeks into raging torrents within minutes. On July 4th, 2025, stalled storms overwhelmed the Guadalupe River, catching residents off guard and causing tragic losses. This weekend's forecast, Repeated heavy rain on non-absorbent ground could trigger a similar catastrophe. The lesson: heed warnings, prepare early, and remember that turn around, don't drown is life-saving advice. In high-risk areas like Kerrville, the time to act is before the rain begins. In the Northeast, a different flood threat is brewing: ice jams. As winter's grip loosens, thick river ice breaks up and can jam at bridges or bends, forming makeshift dams. Water backs up behind these jams, flooding areas not usually at risk, often with little warning. When the jam breaks, it can unleash a sudden, destructive surge of water and ice downstream. Predicting when and where jams will form or break is nearly impossible, making this a hidden danger for riverside communities. Residents must stay alert for sudden water level changes and heed local alerts. Ice jam flooding is unpredictable and can be devastating. Caution is essential. Forecasting this event is complicated by uncertainty in the jet stream's behavior. The timing and intensity of rain from Texas to the Mississippi Valley depend on a storm system over the southwest. If the system stalls, rainfall totals could skyrocket in the same areas, greatly increasing flood risk. Meteorologists analyze dozens of models, but small changes aloft can mean big differences on the ground. That's why forecasts may shift. Residents must be ready for updates and changes. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and stay tuned as new data comes in. The next 48 hours will be critical for refining the forecast. Urban areas face unique flood risks. Concrete and asphalt prevent water from soaking in, overwhelming storm drains during heavy rain. Streets and underpasses can become impassable in minutes, posing major threats to motorists and pedestrians. Just 6 inches of moving water can knock you down. A foot can float a car. Rapid development increases runoff, flooding homes and businesses, and causing costly damage. Residents in cities like Dallas, Little Rock, Memphis, and Cincinnati must know flood-prone roads and have an evacuation plan. Never drive through flooded streets. Turn around, don't drown. Prepare for power outages and be ready to act quickly. The science is clear. This is a dangerous, multifaceted flood event. Your response matters most. Have a plan, assemble emergency supplies, and know where to go if evacuation is needed. Floodwaters are unpredictable and deadly. Never walk, swim, or drive through them. Turn around, don't drown is more than a slogan. It's a lifesaver. Stay informed, listen to local officials, and act quickly if warnings are issued. Preparedness is your best defense against rising waters. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and take this threat seriously.